Today, I'm glad you're here. We're in the Initiate Launch series. This is a series, this is the second of 2 weeks. Next week, we're launching the Heroes series. And you're going to love all the hero themes that are in the Bible. They're so powerful, and Pastor Brett's helping us with that too. But it should be an amazing series on the heroes, not just the hero theme, but who is the hero in your life? And that's a good question, and we'll examine that as we go forward. But last week, as we started, we talked about this is a new year. What would Jesus whisper to me in a new year? If he were to come and visibly, audibly whisper in my ear, what would he say? Probably not, Larry, you need to have a New Year's resolution. He probably would say, Larry, you need to cut carbs. Or Larry, you need to exercise more or do this. Probably not what he would say. But I'm suggesting to you, last week's teaching would be some of the possibilities. And one of those is you need to make sure you have enough rest in your life. When you feel the pressure from others, slip away. And here's the key word last week is reflect. It is essential for your spiritual, mental, physical health to have some point of reflection in your life to enable your balance, which we think is important. And the last thing we talked about last week is in the storms of life, make sure we invite Jesus into our lives, into our boat. We think that's important. So reflection, what is it? It's thinking about it. And it's considering what God has already done. But today in the second week of 2020, I have a couple other things I want to talk to you about. Even though theology is important, reflection I think is important, today I want to suggest one other thing. If we could be challenged to allow Christ to work in us in a greater way this year, how would we do that? See, that's what I want. I want to live a life where Christ is modeled in my life, and I think his spirit and mine are not separated from one another, but we just go along in sync with one another. That's an important thing. How do we do that? So to give you the basis for this, we're going to look at a story in Matthew chapter 25. It's the story of the Canaanite woman. Let me read it for you. Leaving that place, Jesus withdrew to the region of Tyre and Sidon. A Canaanite woman from that vicinity came to him crying out, Lord, Son of David, have mercy on me. What do I want? My daughter is demon-possessed and suffering terribly. Jesus did not answer a word, so his disciples came to him and urged him, send her away, for she keeps crying out after us. He answered, I was sent only to the lost sheep of Israel. The woman came and knelt before him. Lord, help me, she said. He replied, it's not right to take children's bread and toss it to the dogs. Yes, it is, Lord. She said, even the dogs eat the crumbs that fall from their master's table. Then Jesus said to her, woman, you have great faith. Your request is granted, and her daughter was healed at that moment. So today, to experience more of God this year, I want to give you 3 suggestions. And I give you these notes in your hand. You can take those with you if you want. You can fill in the blank if you want, but they're on there for you. Here's step 1. First thing I want to suggest, there's a time for advance and a time to retreat, to renew. Verse 21 of this passage, leaving that place, Jesus withdrew to the region of Tyre and Sidon. Before Jesus was about to enter Jerusalem and have his next confrontation with religious leaders, he went to this region in the northern part of Galilee to where the good Jews would not go. It's called the Decapolis. Deca means 10, polis means cities. So it was 10 cities north of Israel, north of the Sea of Galilee. And in this mountainous area, and if you've been to Israel with me, we've been to some of those cities, some of the Decapolis. And on this journey, scholars believe that Jesus was trying to get his disciples out of the normal routine so he could prepare them for Jerusalem, that which was ahead. He withdrew because he wanted to prepare them for what was coming, even the cross. But I want you to notice the pattern. And you can see this pattern in Jesus' life in several stories. We're just picking one of the stories recorded in the Gospels. And here's what the pattern is. There's a time to speak out, and then there's a time to renew. There's a time to advance, and there's a time to withdraw. It's like the tide. It comes in and out. Everywhere he went, crowds followed him. And they found him and followed him, and he needed to get away for the good of the 12. In the story, it becomes evident, though, there are needs wherever you go. Even if you try to retreat, there's always needs where you go. But if we look at his life and the story, I think there's some lessons for us in the 21st century. There's a cycle of advance and retreat that needs to be a part of our lives. If I could play the trumpet, I cannot, but some of you can. And if I could, my son Ryan could play it. I'd play this tune. Charge, exactly, right? I mean, charge, we all know that. We're even for sports enthusiasts. Charge, advance. I mean, work hard, win. Don't give up. Keep going, change the world. That's amazing, and I'm all for that. But notice this amazing insight. No matter how much you charge ahead, human needs is always going to be among us. To continue to give out, we have to make sure that we have enough to give. Have you ever heard of burnout? That's where you give so much. In every profession it seems it happens, but it is acute in caregivers. What is it? Well, helping others. When you're walking in grief, when you're encouraging someone all the time, it can empty your reservoir. I want to tell you personally, I have learned lessons of burnout. Pastor, have you ever burned out? I don't think completely, but I sure have been browned out, singed like a piece of toast, almost black. I tell you, I've been very close. But I'm the only one I've discovered who knows where my reservoir level is at. I'm the only one who knows when I have the potential for overdoing it. Pastor, you mean you overdo it? Folks, I love to work. I love my life. I love people. But there's sometimes just after you go, 60 hours a week, 70 hours a week after week, sometimes you realize, hey, my emotional reserve, my fuel tank is not as full as it should be. So I want to say this. When I'm full of it, no problem. But when I'm not, when I get below a quarter of a tank, I begin to sense this need to refuel. When I get below a quarter of a tank, I have some signals that I've discovered for me. My fuse gets shorter. What do you mean by that? I mean, my patience not very great. And when I'm tired, when I'm exhausted, when I've really burned out, I begin to realize I'm less than my best. I've been in places where I go, that is not who you are. Why did you feel that way? Sometimes it doesn't even come out. After a while, some of us, we grew up in a certain tradition where we keep all that stuff inside, but I have felt it on the inside even if it doesn't come on the outside. You say, what does that mean? That means when somebody does something to you, I don't flip people the bird. You may. I'm more spiritual. It's in my brain, but it's not on my hand, right? You say, well, what's the difference? Not much. There's not much different. And when that's in my head, I realize that's not good for me. I'm not at my best. And I don't do as much counseling as I used to. As a matter of fact, I don't do very much at all. Several reasons. One is it takes a lot of time. But the more important reason, it takes almost all my emotional energy is gone in a session. See, I think every day, some people start with this much emotional energy, some people with this much. But if I start this day and I have one counseling session, that much is gone. This is all that's left. I've learned I just don't have the emotional depth to do that. You say, well, I don't understand that, Pastor. I'm not in that world. But you ever gone to a funeral for a day or two for a family member? And you've cried and you've cried and you've cried and you come back and you just go, I'm just exhausted from being in the funeral. Or maybe something similar, planned a wedding. Emotionally exhausting. And there's not really much difference between a funeral and a wedding in some respects. I mean, think about it. A lot of gathering, a lot of family, a lot of emotion goes on. And one time in Monticello, I had a funeral at 10 o'clock and I had a wedding at noon the same day. And just to transition those emotions, all the crying and everything, and to transition to all the rejoicing. And the rejoicing was at the funeral. You've been those? I have, to where just people are crying all over. I go, I thought this was supposed to be happy, but not always. Or maybe you watch the news after something like 9/11 or a horrific tragedy, and you find yourself watching it, and your empathy's there. And by the time you're done, you're just exhausted. This week I saw one of my favorite movies called Les Miserables. Les Mis. It's in the musical. Hugh Jackman starred in the latest one that's out. I love Victor Hugo's story. I read it in college. I've seen almost every rendition of it. I've seen it in London at the musical. It's a story of redemption. It's wonderful, but it is emotional. And I said, Becky, look, it's on. She goes, oh, I can't watch that. It's just exhausting. What she means is it's emotional. When we get emotional, we spend lots of energy. Most of us, like I said, just have so much energy a day, and mine is spent. And once it's spent, it's gone. So I say that to say, well, what about counseling? We have an excellent counselor that meets on our campus. We have an office for that Lifehouse Counseling. So we have someone professional who does that, and they have better techniques so that they can just do it more than I can. And here's the truth from the life of Jesus. I wished I learned this so much earlier. We need to take time to refill so that we can have more to give. Jesus gives us a glimpse into his life and ministry, and he shows us a cycle of selfless giving, but also times of retreat for infilling. So what are you saying today? This is a little phrase I have for you. Advance, then retreat, then repeat. So that's good for this year. Today, the new year, we should take time for renewal. Renewal takes time. The best renewal I know is to spend time away from our busy schedule. If you can, take a vacation. But the problem is, a lot of the vacations I take, I need a vacation from my vacation. You ever felt that? You come back, you say, oh, but even a vacation from my vacation, I don't have the emotional emptiness that I do. But good vacation refills my emotional energy tank. But vacation or not, say I can't take a vacation. I've got great news. Find a quiet time. Say, when could that be? When you stop at a light, put your phone down. One of the reasons I think we don't have any quiet time is because this device is always in our hand. It's always on our mind, and it's never ending. It's okay to put that away. I found another place that you can reflect. In the shower. Stay in there a little longer. You normally don't take your phone in there. Right? And just say, God, in this time of the shower, I just need to think about my life. Am I going in the direction I want? God, I want you to fill me so that I can make a difference in others' lives. You know, it's a time of withdrawal, reflection, prayer, journaling, a time of refilling. Advance, then take a retreat, then repeat. Which leads me to the second thought of the day. And it says, faith is here displayed as persistence, a desire to be heard. A Canaanite woman from the vicinity came to him and said, Lord, son of David, have mercy on me. My daughter is suffering terribly from demon possession. That was the cry of her heart. What is the cry of your heart? You know, sometimes my heart cries for those who are hurting. And love compels us to help those whom we love. But love compels us to help where we can when we hear those around us who are suffering. This woman was a loving mother and passionate about her daughter being healed. Probably her daughter was not demon possessed. She goes, oh no, that's what it says. Let me give you an example. If you take somebody who had seizures and epilepsy, two people with the same disease, exactly the same. You put one in the first century, and if someone had a seizure today in this auditorium, and I've been in church at Suncoast, and within 1 month I had one guy have 2 seizures in worship service. And we had to call 911, call the paramedics. They take him in. Oh, he's having a seizure. He's an epileptic. But if you take that same person and put him in the first century, and he has a seizure, they call 911. They come out and say, he's demon possessed. Because they couldn't explain it. It's the best they know. So when you look at people in this situation, you got to understand this was 2,000 years ago. They didn't have 911. They didn't have the medical. But probably most scholars think that she was suffering from some kind of epilepsy. But this lady was passionate about her daughter being healed. I mean, in both instances, whether you're in the first century or the 21st century, if you're the mom and it's your kid that has a seizure or a loved one that has a seizure, you're going to do whatever you can to help them. This lady, according to this story, would follow this healer, Jesus, for days if she had to. She'd make herself a nuisance, obnoxious. She'd do whatever she could to get relief for her daughter. That's not something that just happens back then. something that still happens today. Notice how this woman annoys his disciples. She won't quit crying out and following them, and Jesus is silent. He doesn't say a word. And out of desperation or frustration, the disciples come to Jesus and they say, Jesus, send her away. She keeps crying out. She's not paying attention to us. Send her away. She's annoying. Send her away. She's a Gentile. Send her away. We're busy doing God's work. Send her away. Give her whatever she wants. She's ignoring our rebuke. She will only listen to you. So get rid of her. They were so annoyed. Has someone ever annoyed you? You're married, aren't you? Every wife here, you know your husband's annoyed you at different times. What about children? Anyone else? Do you ever notice that other people's children maybe annoy you more than your own? When Becky and I first got married, we decided we wouldn't have kids right away. We were in school, so 5 years we were without children. I've told you this before, but we just decided we wouldn't have children until we were done with school. In the meantime, we analyzed other people's parenting skills. You know what we'd say? We're never going to let our children behave that way. We're going to be consistent, unwavering. We were model parents before we had kids. Then we had them. And then I began to discover some things. There are reasons that children cry. They're often disruptive as children. They need attention and care. And other people's children, they're more apt to annoy us than our own. A baby spit up or dirty diaper is terrible if you're a parent. But if you're not the parent, that's no good. As a mom and dad, you just take care of it. There's a reason that our children cry. They're teething. Bless their hearts, are teething. Or they missed their nap. Or they just had their shots. You know how they get a little fussy after they just had their shots? But that's what happens when my children act this way. There's an excuse. But when other people's children are crying, it's just bad parenting. They need to take care of their kids. Let's push this one step further. The same can be said for adults. There are adults whose actions annoy us because we don't understand. And when we're annoyed, maybe we should pray this prayer I found. Heavenly Father, help us remember that the jerk who cut us off in traffic last night is a single mother who worked 9 hours that day. She's rushing home to cook dinner, help with homework, do the laundry, and spend a few moments with her kids before they have to go to bed. Help us remember that pierced, tattooed, disinterested young man who can't make change correctly at the register is a 19-year-old college student balancing his anxiety over final exams, issues at home, and fear of not getting his student loans next semester. Remind us, Lord, that the scary-looking homeless person, the one that's begging at the same spot every day, who really ought to get a job, is a slave to addictions that we can only imagine in our worst nightmares. Help us remember that the old couple walking annoyingly slow through the store aisles and blocking our shopping progress are savoring this moment, knowing that based on the biopsy report last week, this will probably be the last year they go shopping together. Father, remind us that each day of all the gifts you give us, the greatest gift is love, not annoyance. It's not enough just to share the love with those we hold dear. It's not enough just to open our hearts to those that are close to us, our kids, but open our hearts to all your children. Let us be slow to judge, quick to forgive, and let's be quick to show patience, empathy, and love. Amen. Pretty good prayer for 2020, isn't it? Even though annoyance motivates us many times, even though the squeaky wheel gets the oil, even though people post on Facebook, pray for whatever, or if we get 1 million people to understand this, maybe God will do something. Yeah, let's just annoy God so much that he'll finally do what we want him to do. Annoyance is not the motivation for God to work in our lives. That doesn't work. But notice the story and the details. He doesn't answer the cries of the woman. Jesus is silent. He doesn't appear to be annoyed at all. The disciples said, Jesus, just send her away. Remember, just if you can do anything, have her be quiet. They're frustrated with her verbal cry. And at this point, Jesus does speak. But it seems like his answer is not for the woman, but for his disciples. What does he say? He says, not to her, but to them. I am only sent to the lost sheep of Israel. What does that mean? I mean, why would he say that to them at this time? Jesus was trying to tell his disciples, you guys just keep bringing these people to me to be healed. But my primary purpose is to transform a broken religious system. My primary purpose is to inaugurate and bring in and initiate this kingdom of love that will change not just one life, but will change the world, that change the hearts of all of Judaism. My primary focus is so much bigger, starting with all of Israel. You guys need to understand that's why we're here. That's why we're reflecting. That's why we're withdrawing. So that you can get ready for what we're going to do when we go to Jerusalem. Which leads to the last thought today. It's this. Greater faith is the result of inner trust. It says here, woman, you have great faith. Your request has been granted. Despite the prejudices of society, God can still display love and mercy. Once dialogue begins, the story changes. She kneels before Jesus and asks, Lord, will you help me? And he's not foreign to this because he'd already helped some Gentiles. He'd already healed the centurion. He'd already healed the demon-possessed man with the herd of pigs in Matthew chapter 8. What was Jesus really saying? He says, I'm a Jew. I'm a Jewish leader. I'm a rabbi. My focus is not really about a healing campaign. And even today in the 21st century, there's some people who think, oh, it's all about God coming in to heal and heal and heal. But it's really more than that. He comes to proclaim the good news that you and I are in the presence of God and that he loves us. Jesus came to the Decapolis to take a break. He withdrew the rest to teach his disciples, stay focused, get ready, the future's coming. And after the woman kneels before Jesus and says, help me, he says these words, which are confusing to us. We don't understand the culture. But he says, it's not right to take the children's bread and toss it to their dogs. That's a little confusing, isn't it? Gentiles were referred to dogs by the Jewish people. By the Pharisees, they were referred to, the Greek word has to do with dogs that are scavengers. You know, they roam the streets, they're wild animals, scroungy looking dogs. And Jesus doesn't use this word. He uses another word in Greek, which means a small household endeared pet. He says, I'm so sorry. I came to present this to the Israel, not to those who are not ready for it yet. You're called dogs. I just call you those on the outside or those just nearby. And then she said, but even the dogs get to eat the crumbs from the Lord's table. The statement of persistence was not annoyance and defiance. It was hope. And here's what I honestly believe. When we come to Christ with hope, expecting, often our hearts are granted that wish. Jesus responds to her hope with healing. Woman, you have great faith. Your request is granted. In that moment, her daughter was healed. But I wonder what it takes to have such a spirit of humility. Can you see? I don't really know that I pray very often. Oh God, just give me the leftovers. Give me the crumbs from the cake. I usually say, God, just give me a big cake, multi-layers. I want it icing, maybe a few candles. I mean, I got all these great things I want God to do in my life. And she's saying, I'm okay with just the crumbs. In this story today, you and I are the Canaanite woman. When we are truly humble, when we are not demanding or entitled, in any moment in life, my current need can make my heart cry out to God. But also, in any moment, his presence can make my heart sing. I know what makes our hearts ache. And you know what makes your heart hurt. But here's the question I want you to consider today, in this new year. What makes your heart sing? What creates joy in your life? Many of us have been too long without a song. The only song we have is Woe Is Me, or My Heart Is Broken. It's a sad song. But I want you to know, with the presence of Christ in us, you and I can have a song. You know, when we spend some time in reflection, we spend some time with a connection, the song is joyous. When we don't have that, it seems to be less than that. We've forgotten to take a moment and kneel at his feet. Today I want to challenge you. 2020, join me. Let's reconnect to the one who loves us. Let's find out where the song is in our life and let's sing it. I want to find out that which makes my heart sing. And I know some of the things that makes my heart sing. You know what makes my heart sing is to stand before you and teach you some truths that I think are life-changing. What makes my heart sing is when my granddaughters come up and sit in my lap and they put their arm around me and give me a big hug. My heart just sings. It's when I'm able to share the love of God with his children, when I'm able to be there for someone whose heart has been broken and they walk away feeling better because somehow, some way, I've represented Christ for them. But I want you to know, that's not my job any more than it's your job, right? We all have that privilege. No one can love your kids or your spouse or your partner or your family any better than you can. Take the opportunity. And when you do, as your heart begins to sing, God begins to smile and their heart begins to sing, because we really are in this thing together. This year I will be grateful for every moment of quiet reflection, because it's there my heart discovers that God is with me. Can I pray for you? Father, in moments like this, you are whispering deep into our lives about our reservoir, about our emotions, about that which brings joy to us and that which brings heart pain. In a day just like this, in a moment just like this, realign the priorities of our life. May our focus be on renewal, not so that we can feel better, but so that we can pour out our lives and make a difference in our community. Thank you for this advance, retreat, repeat symbols. Pray, Lord, they be applied to our lives today. We pray in Christ's name. Amen. Would you stand, please? I'm going to tell you a story in closing. And as I do, remind you, if there's anything in your life going on you need to pray, someone to pray with you about, there's always someone up front who'd be delighted to pray with you. This weekend represents an anniversary for my oldest daughter, Laura, who normally plays keyboard, and Ricardo is usually on stage singing. But Laura and Ricardo have been married 8 years, and that's a good thing. And so they're off to Orlando to just have a weekend together, which is great. But they have 2 kids, 6-year-old and a 4-year-old. Where are they? Well, they left Friday morning. Well, Thursday night, the kids arrive at my house. And they're late in London. And honestly, they come there and they're so excited because they get to sleep over at Grandma and Pop's. And they're excited, and they get to stay with us 2 nights, Thursday night and Friday night. And then they go to Ricardo's mom for Saturday and Saturday night. And then Ricardo's dad picks them up this afternoon. They come back this afternoon. But on Friday morning, they get up and they go, "Grandma, pancakes." They love pancakes at our house. You know why? We have syrup. They don't get syrup, too much sugar at their house. You know all this. That say enough? Yeah, I understand. But at our house, they get syrup. Becky was making pancakes, and all of a sudden she's mixing it together: oil, water, eggs, batter, just mixing it all together, getting ready for the pancakes. And late in the 6-year-old, as she's watching, she puts the oil in there and she's mixing it up, and it gets a little thick, so Becky takes a little water and she pours in there. And as she does, Leighton says, "Grandma, oil and water don't get along. Oil and water don't like each other. Oil and water are mad at each other." And I just sit there and go, what? Somewhere someone said oil and water don't mix. And she heard all kinds of other stuff, like they don't like each other. But somewhere in your mind, in your history, in your thoughts, you may have heard that God and humanity just don't mix. Some say they don't mix well, but I want you to hear me very clearly. In the person of Jesus, we discover a wonderful truth. The Spirit of God and my spirit go together naturally. And when I quit fighting that and embraces it, it makes my heart sing. See, God always has and always will love me and you. I'm just here to remind you, he loves you today. So do I. Thanks for coming. God bless.